Yeah, let's look at this question, which is connected to application of fraction. I have the first question, which says James spent 2/5 of his money on transport, a half of the remainder on food, and the rest of 54,000 shillings was left. The first question is find the fraction he spent on food. Find the fraction he spent on food. Remember, he spent 2/5 of his money on transport. So how do we handle that? One, if this is my bar standing for money, we have 5 parts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now out of these 5 parts, 2 of them have been spent already on transport. It makes you to have that remainder. So you can say transport is taking 2 out of 5. That makes us to have the remainder, and our remainder is 3 out of 5. Now, basing on this question, it is a half of the remainder which was spent on food. A half of this part which is unshaded, the half of the white part was spent on food. So how do we get that fraction which was spent on food? Practically, if this is the whole part which was spent on, if this is the white part, then a half would be like from this point. But how do we calculate it? Food takes a half of the remainder according to our question. So our remainder is 3 out of 5. So we shall get a half times 3 out of 5, which is going to give us 1 times 3 is giving us 3, then 2 times 5 is giving us 10. That means the fraction spent on food is 3 out of 10, because 2 times 5 is equal to 10. So the fraction spent on food is 3 out of 10, as simple as that. Now part B, what fraction of the money was left? Because even after spending, there's another fraction that remained. Now we want to also calculate, or we are supposed to find out the fraction that remained. How do we go through that? One, the best way to handle that is now to get the fraction spent on transport, then you add to the fraction spent on food. The moment you get the total fraction spent on transport and food, it will clearly show you what fraction will be left at the end. So let's get the total fraction spent, and the total fraction spent is transport plus food, and transport is 2 out of 5, food is 3 out of 10. Our denominators are not the same, so we need to get the LCM of 5 and 10, and the LCM of 5 and 10 is 10. So since the LCM is 10, we shall put that by, then you divide 10 by 5. 10 divided by 5 is going to give me 2. Now multiply 2 by this numerator, which takes us to 4. Bring the operation sign, which is addition. So 10 divided by 10 is 1. 1 times this 3 is going to give me 3. So we're going to have 4 plus that 3, which is 7 out of 10. What is this 7 out of 10? 7 out of 10 is the total fraction spent on transport and food. 7 out of 10 is the total fraction spent on transport and food. Remember, after spending money on transport and food, the rest was saved. So we want to get the remaining fraction after spending 7 out of 10. So coming up with the remaining fraction or fraction left, you are going to have your common denominator as 10 out of 10, take away 7 out of 10. And in this case, since the denominators are the same, our answer is going to be 3 out of 10. That one is the fraction left. Remember, we have answered so far 2 questions. Find the fraction which is spent on food, which is 3 out of 10. Then, what fraction of the money was left? The fraction of the money was left was 3 out of 10. Let's go to the last question on that number. Remember, we have answered the first 2 questions. Fraction spent on food, fraction left, fraction of the money left. Now we want to find out the amount of money this person had before. How much money did this person have before spending? So, looking at the rest of the money which was left, like here we have 54,000 shillings was left. Now, the 54,000 shillings is meant to match with the fraction of the money which was left. I repeat, the 54,000 shillings is meant to match with the fraction of the money which was left. You don't just bring any other fraction. So our fraction left was 3 out of 10. Now, since the fraction left was 3 out of 10, then you can say let the total amount of money be y. The total amount of money James had is y. So since the total amount of money James had is y, we are going to have 3 out of 10 times y should be equal to 54,000 shillings. We are having 3 out of 10 times y. 3 out of 10 is a fraction left. Now the fraction left times the total amount of money, which we don't know, should give us the amount of money which was left. So, multiply both sides by 10 so that we clear off this denominator, and when we do that, we shall remain with 3, because this 10 divided by this 10 will give us 1. Now we have 3 times y is equal to 54,000 shillings times 10. Because whatever you do on your left hand side must be done on the right hand side. Now we have 3 times y is equal to 54,000 shillings times 10. What do we do? Divide both sides by 3 so that you remain with only letter y. So 3 divided by 3 is 1. That 3 divided by 3 will also give us 1. On the right hand side, 3 divided by 3 is 1, and 54,000 shillings divided by 3 is going to give us 18,000 shillings. So what am I having next? I have 18,000 shillings times 10, which gives us 180,000 shillings. Now 180,000 shillings is the value of y, which is the total amount of money James had. So you can say James had 180,000 shillings. Let's look at the next question. And the next question is, Martin spent a third of his money on fees, a third of the remainder on food, and saved 360,000 shillings. How much money did he have before? Now, in this question, we have a combination of items to be handled. Remember, in the first question, I asked you to find the fraction of the money spent on food. I asked you to find the remaining fraction. But this question is having just everything. It's just a whole sum. How much money did he have before? So you have to follow all these steps basing on the statements given. Like Martin spent a third of his money on fees. Look at this diagram. We have 3 parts. 1, 2, 3. The part which is painted dark blue represents the fraction spent on fees. So that is a third. Then the one which is not shaded, we have 2 parts out of 3. That makes us to have the remainder. So fees is having a third. Then the remainder is 2/3. So we now know the fraction spent on fees, which is a third. What about food? This person spent a third of the remainder. Now, a third of the remainder was spent on food, which is a third times two thirds. This two thirds is our remainder. So it is a third times the remainder, which is two thirds. And 1 times 2 is going to give us 2. 3 times 3 is giving us 9. That means the fraction spent on food is 2 out of 9. So that's the fraction spent on food. Ignore that B part. But now, since we have food and fees, let's get the total fraction of food and fees. We need to get the total fraction of food and fees. And food is having a third. Fees is now having 2 out of 9. 2 out of 9. So we now want to get the total fraction of fees and food. Okay, we can continue. The LCM of 3 and 9 is 9. So we're going to have our 9 as LCM. Now, divide 9 by 3. 9 divided by 3 is giving me 3. Now, 3 times this numerator 1 will still give me 3. We have 3. Now that we have 3, the operation which is there is addition. Then 9 divided by 9 is 1. 1 times 2 will still give me 2. Will give me 2, I mean. So we now need to get the sum of 3 and 2, which is 5. So the total fraction spent on food and fees is 5 out of 9. Remember, those are the two major items Martin spent money on. That means the remaining money was left or was saved. And the question is asking us to find the amount of money he had before. And what we have here is the amount of money he saved. Why are we doing all this? We want to get the fraction which Martin saved. But you must also know that you don't just get the fraction because I've told you to get. We are getting the fraction saved because we have been given, or I have given you, the amount of money which was saved. So each item, each sector, or the amount of each sector must match with its fraction. I can't bring the fraction for money spent on fees to the amount of money saved because those two do not rhyme. So I'm dealing now with the fraction. I'm now trying to look for the fraction saved so that I may have it match with the amount of money saved. So the fraction saved will now be 9 out of 9. Take away 5 out of 9. Remember, he spent 5 out of 9. That means what is remaining, what remained or what was left was 4 out of 9. Now, 4 out of 9 is the fraction which was left. Now, since the fraction left now matches with the amount of money saved, you can see the fraction left matches with the amount of money saved. And we have been doing all of this so that we get the fraction saved. Now, what we are going to do, you'll just come and say, let the total amount of money he had be y. Or you can pick any letter, you can say x or r, no problem. Then it is 4 out of 9 times y, which should be equal to 360,000 shillings. Do away with the denominator. Multiply both sides by 9 so that you come up with 4 times y is equal to 360,000 shillings times 9. What next? Divide all through by 4. Divide that side also by 4. Why are we doing that? To remain with only letter y, which will give us the total amount of money he had. So I'll divide that, come up with 1. 4 divided by 4 will give me 1. Then 4 divided by 4 is 1. 360,000 shillings divided by 4. Let me just divide that 6 by 4, which is 9, and there I have 90,000 shillings. So the value of y will be 90,000 shillings times 9, which takes us to 810,000 shillings. So Martin had 810,000 shillings. So basing on the two examples that I've given you, you can handle any question which is in that very line. Thank you. I wish you the best.